All right, we're about to open what might be the oldest cold case file in human history. We're going back, way back, almost 500,000 years, to a time long before our own species even existed, to try and solve a very, very old mystery.
It's a pretty dark question, isn't it? But it's a really important one if we want to understand ourselves. And the answer? Well, it isn't written in any book. It's found in the silent testimony of ancient, fossilized bones.
So, meet the victim at the very heart of our story. To science, it's known as Cranium-17, an early human who lived and died an incredible 430,000 years ago. After its discovery, scientists painstakingly pieced its shattered fragments back together, and what they found tells a tale of a brutally violent end.
Now, to understand what happened to this person, you have to understand the crime scene. And let me tell you, this is one of the strangest, most eerie archaeological sites ever found, a deep, dark cavern in northern Spain.
The place is called Cima de los Huesos. That literally means the pit of bones. And for good reason. The only way in is through a 13-meter vertical shaft. I mean, think about that. That's a 40-foot straight drop into pitch-black darkness. Not exactly a place you just stumble into by accident.
And yet at the bottom of that pit, jumbled all together, archaeologists found the remains of at least 28 different individuals, 28 early humans, all in this one practically inaccessible chamber. It's this wild.
So, finding all these bodies, including our victim, Cranium-17, buried in the clay, well, it raises a huge question. What on earth was this place? Was it some kind of ancient sacred tomb? Or was it the horrifying result of some natural catastrophe that trapped them all? This is where the modern detective work begins. Just like you'd see in a cold case today, scientists brought in cutting-edge forensic technology. They put Cranium-17 under a virtual microscope, searching for any tiny clue that could tell them how this person died.
And the absolute key was to figure out if the skull showed signs of something called perimortem trauma. Now, that's just the technical term for an injury that happened at or very near the time of death, back when the bone was still fresh, part of a living person.
Okay, this is actually a really clever way to understand it. A fresh, living bone is, well, it's flexible. It has moisture. When it breaks, it tends to snap cleanly, kind of like a chocolate bar. But an old, dry bone that's been sitting around for years, it's brittle. It shatters into pieces, more like a dry cookie or a biscuit.
And you can see that difference so clearly right here. On the right, that's a typical postmortem break, found at the site. See how it's a sharp, almost right-angled crack? But now look to the left. That's the damage on Cranium-17. That slanted, angled fracture, that is the classic, textbook signature of a blow to living bone.
So, once they knew for sure the injury happened at the time of death, the team could start to reconstruct the final, violent moments of this individual's life, almost blow by blow. The whole case centers on these two holes right here, just above the left eye. Scientists labeled them T1 and T2. And what's really crucial is that neither of these wounds shows any sign of healing. Not a single bit. That means they were fatal.
And this is where the modern tech gets really amazing. Using 3D analysis, investigators found a stunning clue. When they laid the outlines of the two wounds on top of each other, they were a near-perfect match in size and shape. This couldn't be random. These two wounds were almost certainly made by the very same object.
But here's the clincher. The 3D model also let them trace the path of each impact. And, as you can see, the angles are different. This is the detail that proves everything. This wasn't a single accident. It wasn't a fall. These were two separate, deliberate blows to the head.
So let's put it all together. The evidence is overwhelming. Two fatal blows to the forehead, probably in a face-to-face conflict. They were made by the same weapon, but from different angles, likely by a right-handed attacker. And two blows? That shows a clear intention to kill. This wasn't an accident. This was a homicide.
So, case closed, right? Well, yes, but this verdict does so much more than solve a 430,000-year-old murder. It completely changes how we look at the social lives of our ancient ancestors. It reveals a story that's way more complex and maybe a little too familiar than we ever thought.
The scientific conclusion is just stark. The researchers themselves said it. This is the earliest clear case of deliberate, lethal interpersonal aggression ever found. It means that violence between people isn't some modern problem. It's an ancient, deeply rooted part of the human story.
But hold on, because there's one last incredible twist to this story.
Remember, the forensics proved the victim was already dead before they went into the pit. They didn't die from the fall, which means someone, or someones, from their group had to carry their body to the edge of that dark shaft and intentionally drop them in.
And this right here is what makes this site so profoundly important. In this one dark pit, we find two fundamental, competing truths about who we are. It holds the oldest evidence for our capacity for brutal, lethal violence, and at the exact same time, it shows us the very first hints of symbolic behavior, of caring for the dead.
You know, this single discovery forces us to face the contradictions deep in our own nature. The ability to kill and the impulse to care existed side by side almost 500,000 years ago. So this story isn't just about the first murder. It's about a tension between the very worst and the very best of our nature, leaving us with a question that echoes out of that ancient pit all the way into our world today.